In this video, we're going to show you how to remove and replace front brakes on a Nissan Altima, located right behind the front tire. .21mm socket, remove the tire. Take that last lug nut off. Remove the tire. I'm going to take my 10mm wrench and take this bleeder screw boot off first. And I'm going to take that wrench and break that screw, bleeder screw free. Make sure you have a catch basin below. We're doing this so that we can push the piston back easily once we remove the caliper from the bracket. So 10mm. Let's make sure fluid comes up and just slightly snug it. Now we're going to take the caliper off the bracket. It's a 14mm socket or wrench. Remove those two screws, set them aside. Now we're going to take the caliper right off. Now with my caliper tool, I'm going to get in right inside this caliper, put the spreader right in there so that I can put pressure against this piston and push it back so it seats. But now that it's snug, I'm going to take my wrench again. And the reason is I don't want to reverse my brake fluid. It has ABS, and I want to make sure I don't do any damage to that ABS module. Aim for my catch basin and just ratchet that in. It's not pinched at all. Now we can snug up that bleeder screw and no air will get into the system. So that's what we're looking for. Nice piston seated all the way, no leaks, and the dust boot is clean. I'm going to take a caliper bracket and set this up out of my way. Up on that strut. So these bolts are a 22mm socket or wrench. Break them free. I'm going to leave the pads in there because that way when I put it on my bench to clean it up, I know exactly which pad goes where with the indicator. In this case, it's going to be on the inner pad, but I can match it up clearly before I take it apart. Now our rotor is snug on this hub. It won't come off. And before I take a hammer to it, I'm just going to put a lug nut back on. That way the rotor won't fly off and hurt you. And it doesn't matter where you hit it because you're replacing it. Now let's remove that lug nut. Take that rotor right off. Now we're going to clean the hub surface, and you can use a wire brush, or you can use, like I'm going to use my air tool that has a Scotch guard on it. You can just take a wire brush and go like this. But you want that surface clean because you don't want any rust, raised rust in there so that the rotor doesn't seat properly, and then you'll get a vibration. Now I'm just going to use my Scotch-Brite that has the hole for the lug nuts, so it gets that whole surface. With a smaller wire brush, I like to make sure that I get right at that hub because I don't want this to stick in the future. Nice. I'm going to get some parts cleaner. Make sure your catch basin's there. Clean that up. Let that dry. While that's drying, I'm going to clean my caliper bracket and put the pads in. So here I have my new hardware. That's the caliper tins and my new pads. You can see that the pads have, this is called a spring load on both of them. They put pressure on that pad. And then there's the indicator also. So let's look at the actual bracket. This is going to be the top, and that's the bottom. And you can see that both of the indicators, the one with the spring load is on the top of the bracket. You have indicators on both sides there. So let's remove the pads. See how that's frozen in there? All that road dirt and rust built up on that. That pad has not been sliding like it should. Let's remove the tins. These tins are the same on the top and the bottom, so you don't have to worry about it. Some cars are separate, meaning that one's smaller and one's bigger. These are the same size. So this is the top of the caliper, and you'll notice when you take the slider out, you'll see that rubber boot right there. That indicates it's the top slider. Always has a rubber boot on it. Make sure you put it back in the top part. And the bottom one should have nothing. Yep, just a solid pin. Now I'm going to take my caliper bracket, take a wire brush, and I'm going to clean where those tins are going to sit. I want no rust, no buildup, a nice smooth surface. You could take a wire wheel if you have one, bench grinder wheel. Make sure you use the wire brush part of it and take those off. Do it to both sides. Getting rid of all this buildup. Now it's all cleaned up. I'm going to take some silicone paste or caliper grease, whichever you want to use, and I'm going to put it on the surface of where those tins are going to sit, so that way rust will not form underneath and cause those tins to push up on the actual pads. They go like this, and you'll push down right there. Sometimes I take a screwdriver handle, tap them in. Make sure that those ear tabs have gone all the way down and locked. The same to the other side. Now, do not put any grease or silicone paste on those because it will only collect dirt and then the pads won't move smoothly. Before I put the pads on, I'm going to put my caliper slider pins in. So I want to once again confirm that's the top. So I'm going to take my caliper pin with the boot. Let's wipe it clean. If it had any rust on it up here where the boot sits, I would totally clean that up with a brush. Looks good. Take some silicone paste, give it a light coat. And I'm going to put just a little bit inside that boot. I want it to sit inside those grooves. Put my pin in. I'm just going to spin it. If there's air pockets in it, you'll hear it squish it all the way down, come right out. Let's do the same to that side. So now, the way these pads will go is this indicator is going to go on the outside, and this indicator is going to go on the inside. So squeeze it down like that. See that? And put this side on. You want that to sit just like that, and that flat one to go in between. And that's giving pressure going this way, and this will give pressure and spring going this way. The pads do not move smoothly, and they're like frozen and they're stuck. Sometimes you have to take a little bit of sandpaper or something and take the paint off because you want them to move smoothly. Don't hammer them on because they'll never move back and forth and you'll get erratic pad wear. They always come painted. It's just what they do to protect them. So we're going to take a little sandpaper to both ends there so that they go in that bracket and slide. Okay, so now we got that one in. I'm going to do the same on this side. I lined that up, put that tin, squeezed it in, leave that on the outside. Make sure they slide nice and smooth. You want to take some anti-seize and just give it a spray. Let's coat that hub so rust won't form. And get the new rotor and we'll put it on. I'm going to mount it backwards real quick, just like that. Take my parts cleaner, clean the surface of the rotor. Get any packing oil off. And I'm going to flip it around, mount it. I'm going to take a lug nut, put a lug nut on hand tight. Take my parts cleaner and clean the surface. Now I'm going to take my caliper bracket with the pads all in it. I'm going to slide it right on. Take my top mounting bolt, start it by hand. Take the bottom, do the same. That's the 22mm socket. I'm going to take the pads, I'm going to squeeze them so they hit the rotor. Take my 22mm socket, and I'm going to bottom these mounting bolts out. Just bottom them on the, so I can torque them after. .22mm socket. Torque, factory torque is 91 foot-pounds. Now we can take our caliper, take that bracket right off the way. Make sure the hose isn't twisted in any way. Slide it right over the pads. Put the top mounting bolt on. Start it by hand. Do the same to the bottom. That's a 14mm. I'm going to put my electric tool on that. Snug those up before I torque them. 14mm socket. Get my torque wrench. Torque on this is 20 foot-pounds, and that's a 14mm. Now I can get my 10mm wrench. I'm going to open that bleeder screw, get my catch basin below, and I'm going to give it a good gravity bleed, looking for no air pockets after about 2 or 3 minutes. So it's been about 3 or 4 minutes, no air pockets. So I'm going to close that bleeder screw right up. Get my parts cleaner, clean that off, and then put the rubber boot back on. Cover up that bleeder screw, and now we're good to go, ready to put the tire on. If you used a lug nut, remove it so that you can now remount the tire. Put all 5 lug nuts back on. Torque the front wheel to 83 foot-pounds, 21mm wrench, go in a star pattern. Double check. Now that your brake job is complete, you always want to check your master cylinder, which is located on this, right in front of the driver's seat in the engine compartment. See the cover, remove it counterclockwise, and check for the indication of what kind of brake fluid it wants, and it is .3. So we're going to top the brake fluid off. You can see a filler line right here. And add the brake fluid. Always go slow with brake fluid because there's a screen in there so that you don't get any dirt in there. So sometimes it takes a little time to fill it up. Now you've topped off your master cylinder, you can put that brake cover back on, right on that master, turn it till it locks. Now that you've done your brake job, topped off the master, you want to take your brakes and pump them until the pedal feels firm. You don't have to start it up. You just want those calipers to seat. And now you're good for a road test. Make sure your pedal stays firm and doesn't sink at a stop sign. should be good to go. When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.